Hello everyone and welcome to a most incredible game from the FIDE World Team Championship 2022. It is the legend himself, Vasyl Ivanchuk, versus Jorden van Foreest, one of Magnus Carlsen's proteges, and definitely a strong player. To 2699 the rating, the so-called Hans Niemann rating. And this game is like, it's like watching the old Vasyl Ivanchuk, like someone who was feared by every player in the world, who could just demolish everyone in a most unimaginable style. And the new Vasyl, who sometimes, I guess, misses that his piece is attacked. So it's truly an incredible game, and I'm sure you guys are going to enjoy it. Let's dive straight into it. So Vasyl with the white pieces opens with pawn to d4. We have d5 by Jorden, c4 going for the queen's gambit, and e6 declining the gambit. We have knight to c3 and c5. The Tarrasch defense is on the board. C captures on d5, e captures, and now knight to f3. The two knights variation followed by the three knights variation, e3, and pawn to a6 now. And here usually you will see bishop to e2. This is by far the most popular move. D captures and c5 and g3 are also very popular, but here we have b3. It's not a very often played move, but it has been played by some very strong grandmasters like Vladimir Kramnik played it, Pankratov played it, Wojtaszek played it. So it is not unexplored territory. We have knight to c6, bishop to b2, and now bishop to g4. Pinning that knight, we have bishop to e2, and here Jorden trades the bishop for knight. Captures, and now c captures on d4. We have e captures on d4, and now bishop to b4. So still all known territory. We have castles by both players, castles, knight to a4 now. Idea being, Vasyl wants to bring the knight to c5. With the knight on c5 will be an amazing piece. Maybe later on you can shift it to d3 and to e5, and you never really care about bishop capturing that knight. If bishop captures knight, you capture with the d-pawn, and you open up your dark square bishop along this diagonal, which will be an incredible piece. So here there is one game where bishop to d6 was played, but here we have rook to e8 by Jorden, and it is now as of move 13 that we have a completely new game. So let's see what happens here. Knight to c5, of course. We have b6 chasing away the knight, knight to d3, and now bishop to d6 as the bishop was attacked, and you really like your bishop here. Rook to c1, putting the rook on a nice open c-file. Jorden does the same, and now rook to e1, and both players nicely develop their rooks on open files. Knight to e4, as Jorden has full control over the e4 square, so he gets his knight to e4, and now rook to e2. Nice calm rook lift, preparing rook to c2 to double up on the c-file. We have queen to d7 and rook e to c2. We have knight back to f6 now, and pawn to g3. Still nothing happening, just putting pieces on optimal squares. g3, bishop will be put to g2. We have g6 by Jorden, also creating some breathing room for the king. Bishop to g2, and now rook to c7. Also with an idea of maybe doubling up on the c-file. Maybe queen to c8 will be an idea. And Vasyl plays queen to f1, now x-raying that a6 pawn, but also having now control over the h3 square. He's preparing bishop to h3, so Jorden has to figure out how to deal with both of these ideas. He could play rook to e7 or queen to c8. Those are the popular options. He goes for rook to e7, and okay, now bishop to h3. We have queen to e8. Sorry, that's not an e8. Queen to e8, and now knight to e5. A beautiful square for the knight, and you can really capture it. If you capture them pawn captures, you're gonna be losing material here. It doesn't matter if you capture, because there's all this pressure on the c-file. If bishop captures on e5, just rook captures on c7, and now it really doesn't matter. Rook captures, you're gonna play bishop captures, and it looks like something is happening, but bishop captures on f6. Every exchange variation you can think of here ends by white simply winning. So Jorden plays knight back to b8, and this is by far the best idea. Offers a trade of rooks on the open c-file, here, okay, the interesting thing is, instead of knight captures on e5, I'm sure you guys are wondering what happens if bishop captures on e5. Well, this line is so complicated that I absolutely must show it. Bishop captures on e5, d captures on e5, and okay, knight to e4, bishop to a3, attacks the rook. And now, the only way for black to save the rook, as the bishops here are absolute monsters, is to play After this bishop to a3 move, rook captures on e5. Now pawn to f4. Now you're going to play rook to h5. Now bishop to g4, and now rook to h6. So you can save the rook, but yeah, I mean, what is the rook doing there? And now look at this. Queen captures on a6. Knight captures on g3. And there's no better way to play this because black's position is just terrible. I mean, the rooks here are absolute monsters. The bishops, even greater monsters. The queen controls the entire board, basically. So this is your only option. Knight captures on g3, h captures on g3, and now not the immediate queen to e3 check, but rather first knight to d4. And here black could even win if white accepts the rook. If white accepts the rook, then you actually can win. Queen to e3 with check, and now after king to g2, you have a very nice checkmating sequence. Queen to e4 check, king g1, rook to h1 with check, king to f2, and now you just go for checkmate. Rook h2 check, king to g1 or f1 doesn't really matter because queen to h1 will be checkmate. However, after this knight to d4 move, in this absolutely crazy line, there is the very simple rook to f2, and now there is nothing left for black. You no longer have to worry about queen to e3, you no longer have to worry about this rook, the rook is defended, and after something like rook captures, bishop captures, and queen to e4, threatening rook to h1 checkmate, white can follow up with bishop to h3. Brilliant stuff. Now preparing bishop to g2. If the bishop lands on g2, you never have to worry about this queen. And if rook captures on h3, of course, queen to c8 with check picks up the rook on h3. And so that's pretty much it. King g7, queen captures here. And even after knight to e2 with check, let's say king h2, okay, you will pick up the bishop here. But now f5, and the position is just winning for white. For example, captures, captures. You either trade queens and white has a winning endgame. You have to worry about queen captures on f7. You have to worry about queen to g5 check winning the knight on c1, so absolutely winning for white. But this is what you have to calculate when you're playing Vasyl and he plays knight to e5. So okay, knight to b8, and now we have bishop to a3, really making that bishop pair work. And now comes queen to d8. Here, the best for Jorden was just trading all of the rooks on the c file. Let's say captures, captures, and it's still not a good position for black. Let's say queen c1 puts pressure on the bishop, but you are at least fighting. After queen to d8, we reach the position from the thumbnail, if I will use this for the thumbnail, and that is the move that Vasyl played. So not only did you have to calculate all of that when Vasyl put the knight on e5, but now you have to calculate what happens after knight to d7. And interestingly, Vasyl didn't just calculate all of the things that happen when knight to e5 is played, but he also had to go even further and imagine that the knight will actually reach the d7 square. And now the problem is the rooks are disconnected. And, well, just there are so many threats here, one of them being just knight captures on f6. That's a free knight there, so you can't just leave the knight on f6. And what happens if knight captures on d7? Your rooks are again disconnected. And now rook captures on c7 simply wins material for white. Bishop captures on c7, bishop captures on e7, queen captures, rook captures on c7, and you are up in exchange without a good way to play this. So the white queen will come into the game, and this is completely crushing. Capturing with the other knight isn't all that better because it's pretty much the exact same position. You're just going to capture here. Rook, bishop captures on e7, queen captures, rook captures on c7, and it's the exact same position. So here Jorden played rook captures, rook e captures on d7, and now just bishop captures on d6. And what's the point here? It doesn't seem like Vasyl is winning back material, but he is, and well, with interest. So rook captures on c2, rook captures on d6, and finally you see the idea behind Vasyl's knight to e5 move. That is rook to c8, and Vasyl now wins Jorden's queen. There is nothing better than queen captures on c8, bishop captures on c8, and now knight to c6. So Jorden will not, of course, resign. He still has a rook and the knight for the queen. We have queen captures on a6. Now also Vasyl has a 2-to-1 advantage on the queen side. He will just push those pawns and create a passed pawn. Knight captures on d4, and now king to g2. We have king to g7 and pawn to b4. Of course, Vasyl knows how to push those pawns. Knight to c2, and now queen to a4, putting pressure on the knight. You have to put your pieces on optimal squares before you really start pushing those pawns. Knight to e1 with check, king f1, knight to f3, going for the h2 pawn, but just queen to d1. Not worried about the pawn, because now if you capture, just king g2 and the knight, well, the knight can go to g4, but it's not much. Just bishop captures and queen captures will win you the piece. So after queen to d1, knight to e5, and now queen to d4, putting pressure on the knight. We have knight to f3 attacking the queen again. And here Vasyl should just calmly play queen to c3. He should keep the tension here, not allow the knight to move, not allow the king to move, put pressure on the knight on f3, and now prepare a4, a5. That's how you should play this. However, he played queen to f4, which is also very nice because it attacks the rook and the knight on f3, and he really wants to force straights here, but he missed one very tricky move from Jorden, and I will ask you to pause the video here and try to find this tricky move while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting the idea that the great Vasyl missed. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is knight to e4. Defends his rook, and now Jorden says, feel free to capture my knight on f3, because if you capture it, knight to d2 check picks up the queen, and then I'm just completely winning here. Knight, queen captures, king captures, and you have a rook against a bishop, so completely winning. So knight e4. King to g2 by Vasyl, and now knight to e1 with check, king to f1, and now knight to d3. So he manages to save all of his pieces. Queen to e3, and now knight d captures on f2, grabbing that pawn. And now once the rook comes to c6, attacks the bishop, prepares rook to c1 with check, it will be very, very difficult for Vasyl to defend. So queen to d4 with check, king to g8, and now comes pawn to a4. And this is exactly what we talked about. Vasyl wants to create a passed pawn here with a5, but first he had to play b5. He had to prevent rook to c6, because that's such a powerful idea for black. But okay, rook, pawn to a4, rook to c6, and now bishop to a6, getting the bishop out of harm's way. Also, you might be able to use the bishop to defend. Rook to c1 with check, king to g2, and now knight to g4. And here, there was still a way for Vasyl to play and even win this. With h3, his position is still winning. For example, rook to c2 check, king g1, rook to c1 check, bishop to f1, and now not much to be done here. If knight to g to f2, you will play queen captures on b6, and everything is nicely defended. There's not much you can do here. If knight captures on h3, just play king g2. Not much is happening, and you start advancing your pawns. However, after knight to g4, Vasyl played bishop to d3, and he missed such a painful move. So feel free to pause the video and try to find what Vasyl missed in this position and win the game for Jorden while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting this incredible, paralyzing move. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is rook to d1. This is how Vasyl ruins his immortal, but what are you gonna do? But nicely done by Jorden, of course, by not resigning, by sticking in the game, and by finding the absolute strongest move for the rest of the game. So now the bishop cannot move, and the simple idea of bishop captures on e4, which was the plan, just trading off pieces, doesn't really work anymore. So now Vasyl starts pushing a5, now comes rook to d2 with check, king to g1, and now knight e to f2. Here you should go for rook to d1 check and first trade off a pair of pawns here. But knight e to f2 was played, and now again he gives Vasyl a chance to fight. Vasyl should give up the bishop and just go for the two passed pawns. Knight captures on d3, h3, knight g to e5, and now queen to d8 with check, king g7, queen captures on d5, and you push those pawns and maybe good things will happen. But here queen captures on d5 was played, and this is much, much different, because now knight to h3 check, Vasyl misses everything. Now king to h1 will be met with rook captures on h2 checkmate, and king to f1 will of course be met with knight to e3 check, winning back the white queen. So absolutely stunning. King to e1, rook to d1 check, king e2, now knight captures on d5, king captures on d1, knight to f2 with check, trading off the knight for bishop as well. King d2, knight captures on d3, and he was in this position on move 54 that Vasyl Ivanchuk resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. King captures on d3, knight captures on b4 with check, king c4, and b captures on a5 would be played, where Jorden would have a full knight, and he would have 4 pawns to 2. Of course, this is completely winning for him. So absolutely stunning game. The entire game, like the idea of just bringing the knight to, I believe in the middle of the video I said knight came from f3, but knight to d to e5, calculating this and then calculating this and then calculating this, and then just finding all of this and just trading it down into a completely winning endgame, and then blundering not once, not twice, but 3 times. Well, that's chess for you. You know, we love it for that, and we hate it for that. We love it when it doesn't happen to us, but we love it when it happens to our opponents. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Once again, a big congratulations to Jorden for withstanding such a brilliant attack by Vasyl. That's also a sign of a true great player, because it's not all about attacking. You also have to know how to defend perfectly. So yeah, once again, hope you guys enjoyed this. I would like to thank Carmen Polifronio, Ravishing Reptiles YouTube, Austin Wheeler, Ahmed Youssef, and Anu Pakhal for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the FIDE World Team Championship and everything else that's happening in the chess world. And hopefully we get more spectacular games such as this one. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.